Violence in the city continues. The carnage among our youth continues. 21-year-old Caleb McKenzie is unfortunately deceased this morning. Mr. McKenzie was in a car accident last night at 10:39 p.m. in the 700 block of Sullivan Avenue. Doctors found him unresponsive, or excuse me, police found him unresponsive in his vehicle, and they discovered that he was suffering from a gunshot wound. So most likely he died from the gunshot wound. This comes in the immediate aftermath of two men being shot at a vigil for an 18-year-old girl who was murdered on Sunday night. One of the people murdered, and we still don't have names on them, was a juvenile. So young people continue to die in Andrew Ginther's Columbus. We do, however, have details on how 18-year-old Demaya Cummerlander died. She was at a party, according to the person who now admits he shot and killed her, with other friends, and they were, let me quote directly, drinking and smoking weed while playing with firearms. These according to court records. What do you think is going to happen if you're drinking and smoking weed and playing with firearms? Why are young people in Columbus playing with firearms? Because they perceive, and they may not be wrong, that they need them to stay safe on the streets of Linden, Franklinton, the Hilltop, the Near East Side, an ever-expanding area of violence in our city. I told you yesterday, the areas of town where I consider myself safe now are nowhere near as vast as they used to be. Downtown, what's to worry about? In the 80s, 90s, even early 2000s. And 3 terms of Michael Coleman, 3 terms of Andrew Ginther, a lot of things have changed. Wouldn't consider myself safe anywhere on the south side, anywhere on the east side. North side, that's sketchy too. How far inside 270 on the north side would you consider yourself to be safe? Remember the guy who got shot at the Roosters on 161, Dublin Granville Road? It's not very far inside 270 on the north side. Hope you're safe in Dublin this week. The Memorial Tournament is in town. Now, I don't know that the car thieves that have turned Columbus into a criminal cesspool would attempt to steal cars at the Memorial Tournament, but there are going to be a lot of cars there, and there are going to be a lot of luxury cars there. Problem is, there's also a lot of traffic there, and it's hard to get away. And Dublin police do a great job keeping their community safe. And the rules are different in Dublin, just be advised. Kia boys and juvenile idiots in Columbus who are stealing cars. If you do it in Dublin, you might fool around and find out. You won't in the city of Columbus, not because CPD is incompetent, but because the people who lead CPD and steward CPD and threaten CPD, and I'm talking about Elaine Bryant and everyone that Mayor Ginther has brought in from the city of Detroit. Not just Bryant, but the second in command at the police division and the inspector general, or whatever fancy title they give the person. Plus, we have the creation of the Civilian Oversight Review Board. That's another way that Andrew Ginther and Zach Klein can demoralize Columbus police. But back to the party where Demaya Cummerlander was murdered. The person who shot her is 20-year-old Kenneth Hairston. So 18-year-old dead, 20-year-old shot her. His life has changed. Caleb McKenzie, 21, dead in the car accident, found with a gunshot wound. Notice a trend here? Mr. Hairston, who has been charged with involuntary manslaughter and having a weapon under disability. Is Mr. Hairston in a wheelchair? Is Mr. Hairston missing a leg? No. Having a weapon under disability means that he has a prior felony conviction and was not permitted to have a gun. I've never associated somebody who's a criminal and criminal history makes them unlawful to have a gun. That's considered a disability? Well, maybe in the city of Columbus, that is a disability. Given what Andrew Ginther has done to our city, Maybe it is a disability not to be able to have a sidearm to protect yourself. But he's not allowed to have a gun. So he's had a felony conviction. He's not allowed to have a gun. He has a gun. He's playing with it. And I know how this happened because the model of gun that shot Demaya Cumberlander is the model of gun that I have. And some guns do not have safeties on them. And the reason why they don't have safeties on them is because if you know how to use the gun, then you don't really want a safety on it, because if you're in a situation where you need to use the gun, the last thing you want to do is add another step to get you into a position where you can actually use the gun for its purpose, which is to defend yourself. So they're playing with this type of gun at this party. And the people who were at the party tell the homicide detectives that Hairston, the guy who shot Demaya Cumberlander, and 4 other people, so we got 6 people in a house, and they are smoking weed, drinking, playing with the gun. One of the people handed Hairston a gun, handgun, and tried convincing him to trade guns. So there's more than one gun among the 6 people. Hairston told detectives that he refused and attempted to hand the gun back to the person, but the person smacked his hand, causing the gun to fire and striking Cumberlander. This is a reasonable possibility in that situation, assuming that the smacking of his hand caused him to squeeze the trigger, and there was a round in the chamber, and there's no safety because it couldn't be on if there's no safety, and she died. And then we had the 2 men shot at her vigil, which sounds to me like, I'm spitballing here, somebody's mad that Hairston killed Demaya Cumberlander, and I don't know if he was at the vigil or not, but he didn't report himself to police until after the vigil. And is it a coincidence that after 2 men were shot and murdered at the vigil, Mr. Hairston decides, hey, you know what, maybe I ought to get an attorney and I ought to go downtown and I ought to confess to this before somebody kills me, because they're probably going to take me into custody and then I'll be safe, or safer than I am on the streets